Well, hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of Successfully Social. Really good to see everybody, and so pleased that you can join us tonight on comfortable success within your comfort zone. And I've got a very, very special guest today, Mr. Jonathan Chase from the UK. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Sean.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I've heard that before.
I'm sure you have, Jonathan. And of course, it wouldn't be the same without my inimitable co-host, Sandra Watson. So, Sandra, how are you, Sandra? And I've timed that really well.
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here and can hardly wait to hear the discussion.
Absolutely. Well, brilliant to see you all, and it's great that so many people have shown a lot of interest in the stream. That's really, really appreciated. And as I say, really privileged to be joined by Jonathan Chase tonight. In a moment, I'm going to ask Jonathan to share some information about where he is now, because Jonathan's done an awful lot of things in his life.
I'm in Devon.
And Jonathan, as he rightly says, is in Devon. But in terms of Jonathan's journey, I think many of you will know Jonathan in terms of his expertise and skills as a hypnotist, and possibly particularly his stage hypnotism. But Jonathan's also an author. Jonathan's also a speaker, and has many coaching clients all over the world. So that's one aspect of Jonathan. But what else has Jonathan done? Well, Jonathan is an associate member of the British Psychology Society, and I hope I've said that correctly, and is also a co-founder of the Academy of Hypnotic Arts. So a huge amount of knowledge of people's neurology and how people think. But I could go on, and it'd be far better, I think, to let Jonathan tell us a little bit about himself, and then his journey that's led from that to his current project, which is the Comfort Zone Principle. So, Jonathan, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you've moved from all of that great stuff to the Comfort Zone Principle?
Yeah, it's not a complete move. I'm not away from the hypnosis because the Comfort Zone Principle is very subconscious. It's based on our subconscious cycling and the way that we're hardwired subconsciously. Now, by subconscious, of course, we mean that there isn't actually a subconscious. I suppose the nearest we get to it physiologically is our limbic system, but our emotions, our responses, and that sort of thing. But by subconscious, we're talking about the part of us that makes the decisions, the part of us that drives us, the part of us that makes us want to do stuff. So I haven't moved away from the subconscious. And as a stage hypnotist, having hypnotized over 70,000 people, you know, I'm seeing a lot of subconscious people in action. It's a little bit like being at a pop concert where you see lots of people in a subconscious state all the time. So that allows me, as an observer, I'm a very observant person, you know, to notice that the people have certain traits and they do certain things in certain ways, and that you can evaluate that, you can see it. So to turn that into a useful tool for coaches and for consultants, we came up with a profiling system. It's only 10 questions. It takes about 3 minutes. If anybody wants to pop off and do it while they're listening to this, it won't take them long. It's on the czp.com.
I'll just put that up while you're talking, yeah. Jonathan, to people.
But you know, and we came up with 10 questions that are purely subconsciously based, because what we're looking for where you go when you're when you're not consciously active, when you're not consciously involved in a task, you know, because that's where you default to. I mean, everybody in psychology agrees that a good amount of time to actually work with people's minds is about 40 to 45 minutes. After that, you go into shutdown anyway.
Right.
Nowadays, most of the people that I coach and work with, you know, they will admit that their attention span is probably more like 3.5 seconds. You know, and that's simply because the amount of input that we've got coming in all the time. So we're in default mode even more now than we used to be. Than we used to be when we were writing things down and actually physically filling in forms and doing, you know. So so what we're looking for in the comfort zone. Your comfort zone is your default mode. That's where you go when you're not doing anything else. And what I thought was, you know, simple little premise. Well, what can we do inside the comfort zone without going out of it and getting anxious? And I suppose at some point I'll talk about where that came from. But and you know, surely if you're comfortable, maybe you can do more. And can
I just throw something in, Jonathan? Just because I'm really fascinated with this, and we had a talk, the three of us beforehand. It's quite a fascinating paradigm, isn't it? Because most of us are taught to believe that to learn and grow, you have to step outside your comfort zone and you have to stretch. And I've always believed that. But obviously, what you're saying, Jonathan, is something slightly different, if I understand you.
Well, the thing is, you know, that's become a mantra of personal development. It's become an accepted norm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Now, up until the late 1700s, early 1800s, people thought the world was flat. Even though people had been round it a couple of times by then, you know. Even though people started going around it in the 1400s, it was up until the 1700s that the average person accepted the norm that the Earth was flat. And I'm sorry, but this comfort zone thing has become an accepted norm, you know, and nobody's like sort of stepped back. And now the thing is, you've got 5 types, and one of those types we call performers. Now performers are very vociferous people. They're very gregarious people. They're the risk takers. They're the adventurers, and of course they're the ones who have been shouting the loudest for the last 60 odd years. You know, you've got to take a risk. You've got to take a risk. You've got to make a big decision. And the thing is that you've got 80% of people who are alienated totally from that because they're thinking, well, yeah, I took the risk, and you know what? I don't want to do that again. That was scary. You know. Now it all comes from Yost Dawson, 2 animal behaviouralists, who did an experiment called the dancing mice in I think it was 1920, 21. And basically what they did, they got an obstacle course for mice to get through and get out of. And what they found out was that if they did something like light a little fire at the end where the mice were put in, the mice would get through the whole thing faster. So they concluded that if you were under stress and anxiety, you actually learn faster.
Right. So actually, it's all down to the experiment with the mice, where a fire was set
Absolutely.
under. So I was just going to say, very quickly, I've got to invite Sandra in because I know Sandra's got that quizzical expression. Sandra.
Yeah, I can say leaning forward. She's leaning.
Is that a surprise to you as well? Because it was a surprise to me what Jonathan said at first. It makes sense that when we're in a good place, we might learn more quickly. But I was one of those school. Sorry, I want to put the camera here. I was one of the school that thought, you know what, I've got to stretch. I've got to step outside my comfort zone. Where were you on that, Sandra?
Gosh, for me, I always hated the idea that you had to have pain for gain. It just was totally. I mean, I'm one of those that, well, I don't know about that. It just, for my brain, it never really made sense that we have to cause pain for people to get where they need to be. Now, am I right or wrong on the answer? I don't know. I mean, I find what Jonathan has to say here pretty fascinating because I think, you know, when we're in a place where we're comfortable, I tend to take away more somehow, and maybe I don't know, maybe I don't know what I'm gaining it by, but I like the story of the mice.
I love the story of the mice. Thanks Sandra for that. I'm persuaded that those mice have got a lot to answer for, to be honest, Jonathan.
Yeah.
We've just interrupted your flow there, Jonathan, but to carry on with that, so you kind of, where you're at then is clearly you believe that learning is best done in a place where we're more comfortable. And I did interrupt your flow, so I'll invite you to carry on with that.
Right. The whole thinking of this is, as you know, I'm a wheelchair user. I have a neuromuscular condition called Charcot-Marie-Tooth, and it works a little bit like muscular sclerosis in as much as it's regressive. It gets worse as you get older. Right. It got to the point where, although I still perform, performing has to be now in a nice large theatre with nice, with nice proper dressing rooms and that sort of thing. In the 80s and the 90s, my audience was working men's clubs. You understand what working men's clubs are, sports and social clubs, and sort of like redneck clubs. Sandra, and they were hard places. They were hard places. People have been working hard all week, and they were sitting there going, "Go on then, entertain us," and so there were hard places to do all that, and that was my learning ground. But I never once felt uncomfortable in those places. In fact, I felt uncomfortable doing the posh stuff, doing the corporate evenings and that sort of thing, because I came from a working class background, blah blah blah, no school, and I left school at 15 with a cheer from my teachers, and no, trust me, they actually lined up and cheered, but it's sort of like. The thing is, when you think about it, you remember more of the playground than you do the classroom, unless the classes that you did were enjoyable. Right. So when my lovely partner in business, crime and life said to me, when Jane said to me, "Why don't you teach more?" Because I've done a bit of mentoring. I said, "Yeah, sure." Hello? It's
they're calling.
That was one of your fans ringing in there, Jonathan. My apologies.
Yes, I know. But when she said teach, I thought, right, well, if I'm going to teach, I'm not going to teach classroom. I'm going to teach playground. Because when you're enjoying yourself, when you're comfortable, and you only enjoy yourself when you're really, really comfortable. When you're enjoying yourself and you're comfortable, your brain, the pituitary gland, and your limbic system produces a hormone called dopamine, and dopamine and serotonin. And what their jobs are, they're called neurotransmitters. They act like oil inside an engine. Right. So basically, you create learning better and easier when you're comfortable and you're producing those pleasing hormones, Okay. And the problem is that this misunderstanding of neurology that's come through the personal development movements and through NLP and one or two other movements, has said that you only get those things if you actually achieve something, and that's an entire misconception. You get those hormones when you're enjoying yourself, when you're at rest, and when you're comfortable. Yeah. And
can I throw something in there, Jonathan? Because I guess all of the audience watching and people who may watch the replay can buy into that, where we've all probably had experiences where we do something intuitively and it's right and it's good and it feels good and we're good at it, and it's not that we've had to agonize over it, it's not that we've had to really stress over it, but by God, doesn't it feel good? And is that the sort of thing that you're getting to, Jonathan?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you are hardwired. Your limbic system, your brain, your neurology is hardwired to feel comfortable in certain sets of behaviours. Yeah.
Right.
So and whereas one guy might say, right, okay, we're going to take you up a mountain, you're going to jump off with a piece of silk tied on your back that's going to come out of a knapsack that you did not pack. Yeah. And you're going to enjoy this and think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And only 5 out of every 100 people, 20%, 20 out of every 100 people go, yeah, great, that sounds like a great idea, and the rest are all going between. They are somewhere between. Well, actually, you do that. I'm just going to stay here and look at cloud pictures, or who packed the knapsack. And how many times has this been done? What's it been done? And can I have a rope tied to me? Is there a big beanbag at the bottom so that I don't, all the way through. And all of those reactions are right and relevant for the people. But the people who are the most vociferous, the people who are the evangelists, they're the ones who are going to say, right, walk across the fire. Why? Because you'll feel better afterwards and you'll be in charge of yourself and everything will be great and fabulous. And then you talk to the people who walked across the fire and say, did you do it? Yeah. I felt like I'd really achieved it. Yeah. Did you do anything close to it ever again? No. Why not? I didn't like it.
So in a way, what we're saying is it's something that hasn't necessarily not served people, but it may not be the purest way and the best way of learning.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, because for that 20%, and I mean this is only rough. You can never be 100% accurate on this, but for that 20% who are comfortable taking risks, who are comfortable doing dangerous stuff, who are comfortable being out there, for them that's perfect. That's their comfort zone. They find it uncomfortable if they're sitting at home,
right?
With a load of spreadsheets around. But we've just taken a new marketing guy on, and he profiles as an out-and-out evaluator, and he's just gone into our back end in Infusionsoft and completely refreshed our whole system, and it's already in 2 or 3 days working better than it's ever worked before. Because I'm an observer, and Jane's a creator, and although we got it to work, it's never worked properly before. Okay. Now we've got somebody who's organised and understands databases and can see the thing, and who's really so comfortable doing it. He woke up at 5 o'clock this morning and thought, oh, I'll have a bash at that,
I really like this. I'm going to ask Sandra to come in as well, because one thing you may not know about Sandra, Jonathan, is Sandra's had a huge number of very successful businesses, and in doing that would have blended different personality types to form a good team. And I guess what I'm picking up from what you've said is, there's an element where we should play to our own strengths and assemble teams around us that play to their strengths, and we're all in our comfort zones, but by joining together we work really well. But I must ask Sandra, is that, and maybe I'll paraphrase you a bit, Jonathan, but Sandra, is that kind of your experience?
That's a difficult one, because when you have businesses, you're not always able at certain times to have complementary personalities. You may have complementary
That's because you did not have my profile in, Sandra.
That's probably true. But depending on what's going on at the time, you sometimes have to look at what is the business of the business, and that is to take care of the client. So I may not have been able to get the right personality trait for that point, but we were able, because we were complementary in the skill set, to get out and get the client set. taken care of, and then we might have to, adjust the rest of it. Maybe that's not what you want to hear, Sean, or maybe that's not what Jonathan even would agree with. But when it comes to business, sometimes you have to juggle the whole. And see, he's shaking his head.
I agree with that. I agree with that totally, completely, and absolutely.
Oh, okay. I thought you were shaking your head because you didn't agree. No. I'm thinking, oh God.
No.
Actually, I'm going to ask Jonathan to elaborate on that.
I agree with the fact that that's the way things happen. Yes.
Yeah. Can I just put a little comment up from Tim Longwell, actually, because it made me smile, and then we'll come back to yourself, Jonathan. And what I'd love, Jonathan, is if you can share, because there's some brilliant specifics we've been talking about. So if you can share how the model might work specifically, and we can break that down a bit more. But just before we do that, Tim Longwell, observer creator. You're among the 20% or so who have a choice of which strengths to apply to decide where your true comfort zone is. You join an elite club. And then Tim goes on to say, interesting result, as it mirrors what my wife has always said about me all along. Let me see what the rest of it says. All along our relationship. Thanks, Tim. Interesting comment. Thank you for that. Now, Sandra's just said, in the real world, sometimes we in business we don't always have the luxury of assembling the ideal team around us, so we have to work to understand each other's strengths. So does your profiling work in helping teams understand themselves?
Yes, but not in the way we're talking about. Not in the way we're talking about, because Sandra said something really significant. She used the term skill set.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got somebody with a skill set. Now, I know your profiling, and I know Andy Jackson's profiling. That you work in the same field in the same way, but you both profile differently. Now, you both do the same job, but you do it in a different way.
Right. Interesting.
And that's what we're talking about here with the comfort zone. We're not talking about the job you do. We're talking about how you do that job.
Okay.
Now we explain it. We explain it in the literature this way, that you are all five types anyway. You can't not be.
Sorry, Jonathan. Can I just ask you to perhaps run by the different types for people who maybe?
Yeah, sure. What we use in the model now, it's very important that we use the term model. It's not a 100% thing. There is nothing about neurology that, sadly, that is yet 100%. Were that so, then something like my own Charcot-Marie-Tooth, MS, motor neuron disease, they would be treatable conditions, which they are not. So, but basically, I'm going to look at notes here, just to make sure that I haven't missed anything out at all.
Sure.
But there are 5 stages to any task, to the way success works, to the cycle of success. This is the model. Let's start with experience. You have an experience, something happens to or around you. The next thing that happens subconsciously is that you evaluate that experience. Was it good? Was it bad? What parts of that experience occurred? You organise that, you file it away. The next thing you do is you build up an expectation of what's going to happen next based on that evaluation of what happened before. You fill in the gaps in that expectation by using your imagination. You create the picture, the big picture of what's going to happen next, and then you take an action. And every action you take, of course, gives you an experience. Something happens because or around you. So it's a cycle that's going around and round and round. What we found was that we can take people's subconscious natural ways of doing things, and we call those a strength, right, simply because that makes the most cognitive sense. What we actually mean is that it's your primary state. It's where you are when you're not doing anything consciously, when you're not doing anything else. So for observation, of course, we've got the observer. That is people who are very aware of what's going on around them. They know where the glass is. You know, right, the sadly empty glass. They know where the glass is. They know where what's going on around them, and they love getting and giving feedback. So they tend to be teachers, trainers. You know. Okay. Then we've got the organisational type of people. They like things organised. You know, even if it's not in alphabetical order, they know exactly where that Madonna CD is on their shelves. You know, okay. They are organised. They know what they're doing, and they're very much into the detail of it. And then we've got the predictors, and the predictors must have a safety net before they do anything. They never take risks. They build their expectation based on what's happened to them in the past. So they're not the risk takers. And it's funny, you know, when you're doing the profiling, the only people who take it twice in the same hour are predictors, because they don't like the idea. They see that as being negative. But the way I always explain, we need predictors. We need people who like comfort zone, because those people invented things like crash helmets. They invented cat size. They invented seat belts. You know. So we need the people who are going to say, well, what's going to happen when it goes wrong, you know? Okay. And then we've got the creators. They're the innovators. They're the people who just pop up with an idea, and not so much invention, but innovation, you know. And they like to. They're the motivators. They're the sort of people who like to inspire other people to get on with things. And then we've got the action takers, and we've got the people who take the risks. We've got the people who go out and push things. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure Sandra will agree that in business you meet all sorts of people. I mean, I've got clients all over the world. I've got one guy who is the biggest risk taker I've ever met in business. He owns 2 multi-million-pound businesses. He invests in property, and he won't buy anything that's worth less than 2 million, and he rents them out. And I said, well, why do you do that? He said, well, number one, the rent actually pays the mortgage. He said, and number two, he said, I've staff in there, so the people don't get to trash the place. Right. You know, so he's got the idea that the more he spends, the better clients he gets. You know. But he's an out-and-out risk taker. But when you meet his manager, you wouldn't meet a bigger evaluator, because, like, you know, and if you said, would you do what John does, he'd go, no way. He said, that guy's an idiot. You know. So it's not about what you're doing so much, Sandra. You know, you can be an observant president of the United States. You know, you could be an observant one who looks around and sees what's happening in the world, and that's very much into, you know, doing the world thing. Or you can have an evaluating one who's into the numbers, the figures, and into organising things better. You can have the predictive one who says, no, we don't dare do that, because the last president that did that, you know, only lasted 3 weeks. And yeah, I would mention some names here, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to be accused of getting it wrong. Or you could, or you've got the big innovating ones, the ones who see the big picture, you know, and oh, we can do this, you know, we can fly to the moon, and we can do that sort of thing. And you've got the action taking ones who say, to hell with it, let's just nuke everybody, you know. But it's not about the skill set that's on board. It's about how that's done. Yeah. So when I go into a company, when I'm working with companies and teams, we evaluate people, and we don't say, "Oh, that guy's an evaluator, so he's better off doing your books if he hasn't got that skill set on." But he might be the best salesman you've got if he does it in a very organised, very set way. And if that's not the way you do things, you need to restructure the way the task's done, rather than change the job they're doing. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful example, because I was actually thinking just then about some specific examples you might be able to share with us, and I like that. I used to work for a global pharmaceutical company that I won't name, and they launched a profiling system which was nowhere near as good as yours. But the initial launch was so, well, I don't mean that to blow smoke, but it was the execution of it that was a little bit dangerous, because you had some senior managers who would say, you know what, we've just discovered that Sean is X, and they start scratching their chins and saying, well, is he in the right role? And what I like about what you said, Jonathan, is it isn't necessarily that you can't do a role just because you're of a certain type, but the way you execute that role may be slightly different if you're an organizer versus if you're a predictor. But you could still be exceptional at the role. You'll just process it and go about it a slightly different way. So maybe, Jonathan, can you give us some examples of where you've done some consulting? Sorry, let me rephrase the question. What you don't know, Jonathan, is in our stream we've got quite a mix of people watching live. So we've got people who are watching because of their interest in hypnotherapy, who may be entrepreneurs, who may be employers. We've got small business owners, and we've got people who are watching for whatever reasons have brought them to this particular hangout. And probably all of us can buy into what you're saying, and now we just want to get a sense of how could we practically apply it within the teams and relationships we've got, and maybe in the businesses that we're operating. So can you share some specific examples with us on that, Jonathan?
Okay. Yeah. We were doing one of our workshop days a couple of years ago. I mean, this has been rolled out mainly to therapists to use as a therapeutic tool, but we're bringing it more into the personal development thing now.
Okay.
And we've got a married couple who ran a home business. It was during the .com boom, I think.
Yeah.
But they, what the lady said to me was, what the girl said to me was that they were having real problems, not just in the business, but actually it was seeping into their relationship. Right. Always arguing about who should, which way should be doing that. And I said, right, okay, let's do your profiling. And it turned out that she was a very strong evaluator, very organised, very methodical, and that he was an out-and-out performer,
Right. Okay.
And I said, right, okay, who does what job? He says, well, I look after the database, so I do the books. He said, and I work in the office. And I said, right, and I said to Claire, shouldn't say the name, should I? I said to Claire, I said, well, what do you do? And she said, well, I'm the nicest speaker, so I do cold calling and ring it. I said, right, I'm going to ask you one simple question. Tell me the absolute honest truth. And I said to the guy, I said, do you enjoy what you do? He said, no.
Right.
He said, but I'm best at it. I said, oh, right, are you? He said, yeah, I've got the qualifications. And I said, right. And I said to the girl, I said, do you enjoy what you do? She said, not really, it's not really. I said, right, okay. I said, do me a favour. I said, for the next 2 weeks, swap roles.
Mm-hmm.
They rang me up after 3 days and thanked me for saving their marriage.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because the sales role that he was in, it wasn't what they were doing. They were cold calling local companies to offer their services as internet marketers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and it was a while ago, so it wasn't as common as it is now. But but I'm trying to remember here. You sort of put me on the spot, and I've come unprepared with.
No.
But as I remember it, you know, the way they were doing things, they really needed the risk taker to make as many calls as possible during the day, and actually get into talking to strangers, while the organised person was organising the delivery part of it, you know, and. But then she turned to me, she rang up a week later, she said, you know, I don't like this bookkeeping. I said, right. I said, well, what we'll do then, we'll outsource the bookkeeping and find somebody who does like it. I love what John Arrowas said in The Secret, you know, he said, find somebody who plays what you hate.
Yeah, love it.
And I think that's probably one of the best things. But as that went on, they were fine. A few months later, I was working with a guy who had to make his own sales calls. He had to do it, you know. And he said, I just know it's gonna turn out bad. I said, why? What makes you think that? He said, well, you know, I'm not very good at it. I know this, I know that. And after talking to him for a bit, I thought he's building up a really strong expectation. He's a predictor, you know. But we also found that his secondary strength was creator. So he was a very visual person, very imaginative person as well. So what we got him to do was just absolutely all around his screen, on his telephone and everything, was put pictures of his family, who really put him in a good mood, and you know, he could see his family there, and he could see all the successes that he'd had, having 3 wonderful children, and it just changed the way he made the calls. So his behaviour and his mindset were different.
So in essence,
he was still doing the same job. He was still doing the same job, but he was doing it within his comfort zone now.
Exactly what I was going to say. It's funny, isn't it? So what happened there, and with the couple that you talked about as well, was that suddenly they were playing to their strengths, and in doing the roles for them were.
Sorry, this is something I'm really adamant about. There's the NLP thing that we get fed time and time again, that we come into the world as a completely blank sheet, and that everything about our personality and everything is learnt. Rubbish.
Yeah.
Most of it is. Our social standing, you know, our religious beliefs and stuff like that. But just like the shape of your face has been genetically constructed from the blueprint inside you, what people forget, we forget that the brain is a physiological organ.
Yes.
The shape of the brain is what makes us human. It's got nothing to do with the size. It's actually got a lot to do with the folds and the number of folds that are in the brain. So that there's a lot more ways that our brain can make connections than animals with similar sized brains. Yeah. So our brain, our physiological system, has things on board that we have no control over, that are subconscious, although we'll argue whether they're subconscious or not, but they are not consciously controlled. They're not things that we can control, and that's why we fall in love. That's why we have a particular attraction to a particular sex. You know, you don't learn to be gay; you're born gay. You know, you don't. You don't. You're born with a liver that works in a certain way. If that liver produces too much of the wrong cholesterol, you will have angina. You'll get arterial sclerosis, regardless of what food you put in you, regardless of what you've learned or anything like that. And we accept these things. I know one that made Sandra smile before when I said we accept that people can be born with a deviated septum and they have problem breathing, but we can't accept for some reason that people are hardwired in here. And that they've got a set of behaviours on board that they were born to do those behaviours. You know, That's where talent comes from. I mean, you can take Gladwell's 10,000 hours and you can shove it, as far as I'm concerned, because yeah, okay, you can learn a skill in 10,000 hours and become a master of it, but that does not explain the 4-year-old child who just walks up to a piano and starts to play it.
Yeah.
They are naturally talented to do that because some of the connections that you need to make music work in your head are already there.
It's a bit like...
sorry, let me give you an amusing little thing. One of the routines I do on stage as a stage hypnotist is to hypnotise everybody and tell them to sing Happy Birthday to you, but to do it in different languages like Chinese and stuff like that. You know? Okay. Now, believe me, not everybody can sing in tune.
I believe you.
Although we've all got throats. We've all got nasal passages. We've all got an echo chamber. We've all got ears. They all work in a very similar way. But some people cannot hear that they are out of tune, flat, out of key. Mm. Yeah. Mm. No matter what, and you can teach them all you like, and you will get zilch result out of them. Now the thing is, our natural makeup, our natural behaviours, our natural way of doing things is our nature. It actually is our nature. We're born with it. Yeah. You know? Can't change it. Can't. You can. But the problem with being cognitive people is we can certainly override it. But if you put somebody who's doing a job, regardless of the skill that's involved, if you put them in a situation where they're doing a job and they're not happy doing the job that way, you won't get full performance. You won't get somebody who's going to be in that job for the next 30 years or 40 years. And if you do, then they're going to be saying they had the worst life anybody's ever had. Okay?
Do you know, that's really powerful, because I having worked as a solo entrepreneur and also in big businesses, and probably very true with Sandra as well, I think sometimes we do people a disservice in that situation. There's nothing worse than somebody trying to do their best out of the best of intentions, but in the wrong role. And then they'll start the self-sabotage behaviours, they'll start feeling depressed, they'll take it out on their partner, they'll take it out on the cat, and it all goes horribly wrong. And I guess what you're saying is another benefit to the profiling is it helps individuals understand where their strengths are, but it also helps employers understand best fit to an extent. So I guess, actually, Sandra, you've been quite quiet there. Have you got any thoughts in terms of where we're going at the moment?
Oh, she's thinking. You can see she's thinking.
She is indeed.
Well, I was thinking, one of the things that I learned very quickly in business was that when someone would come and apply for a job, when I first started, I would tell them what the job paid and were they comfortable with it, you know, etc. I soon learned that if they did not feel that they deserved that position, that I was doing them an injustice. So what I learned was to ask them what salary, what rate are you looking for, and if it was way below what the job would pay, I knew that, okay, let's look at their qualifications. They had the qualifications, they just didn't have the part of them yet that brought them up. So I would give them, if they were qualified, the position at the rate that they were comfortable with. It was their comfort zone. And then I would increase that as they went along, depending on them. And I knew I was going to lose them ultimately, because they would get to a point where they realized that, hey, look what I could do. So it's the sense that what you're saying is that I forgot what I was going to say there, but I learned very quickly that I had to let them be in their comfort zone and not in my comfort zone. And that is something that is really difficult sometimes to do, because we want people to have the best.
That's because you're right. Okay, look at it this way. If I don't know if you did the profiling. Did you do the profiling?
No. Oh, you mean your profile?
Yes.
No, I didn't. I was scared of it. I might find something about it.
Huh.
No, I didn't have the time yet. That's all, Jonathan. But
okay, let's presume you're an evaluator. Yeah. just make that assumption. I don't know. I haven't talked to you long enough. I haven't seen you doing anything, so I don't know. But you're either an evaluator or a creator looking at your lower third. But but say you're an evaluator. Now the thing is, you're an evaluator, yeah, and you're interviewing Sean, who's a creator, but you're looking at a creator from an evaluator's point of view, and you're making assumptions with the evaluator set up. So what you're actually doing is looking at his evaluator and deciding on how strong that is, and making decisions based that way. But we make all our decisions subconsciously. The job of the cerebral cortex, as Seth Godin puts so beautifully in his latest book, the job of the cerebral cortex is to tell the story of why we made that decision. Yeah. So when you're assessing people and when you're looking at people, you're making those decisions based on your setup. Yeah. So to be honest, it's like when I talk to John and I say, well, what do you think about your manager? He said, I can't stand the guy, but he's really, really good. And I said, why can't you stand him? And he said, oh, everything's got to be organised. He said, and the forms you've got to fill in and that. He said, when he starts talking to me about it, that's the end of the meeting. He said, because I want to go off and race my boat. Yeah? Because, and here's a performer who's astute enough to know that he has got no idea what that evaluator's talking about.
Right.
And it doesn't really bother him that much, so he goes away. I'll tell you another performer whose name we can use, but he profiles as a performer and a creator, and that's Richard Branson. Yeah? Now, how do we know he's a performer creator? Because his motto in the office is "Screw it, let's do it."
Right.
Yeah. But his office is a hammock on the island that he owns in the Bahamas, overlooking the sea. You know, that's where he spends most of his time thinking up his ideas. I love it when people say, "Oh, Richard Branson's a great businessman." No, he's not. He doesn't run any businesses at all. He's fabulous at finding the right people to put in the right jobs. Yeah. Because as an innovator, because as somebody who inspires people, he can get people to go beyond the limits. But he's also very, very intuitive of where people fit in the job. So he's very good at finding the right person for the right job. And in his remit for that is basically, right, okay, how do you find? I mean, I've been asked this, but just over the last few days. A guy that I'm helping with his coaching business, he said, right, he said the answering the phone, he said, and running the office, he said, it's a pain in the backside. Who do you use? He said, who does yours? So I said, well, Regis. And he said, what? I said, Regis offices. We pay £147 a month. We've got an office we can use for 5 days a week, and I answer all our phone calls, and you know, and take messages, and they answer with a script and that. And he said, right, okay. He said, but how do you know they're the right people? I said, well, I went and I said to the 4 girls that work in the office, do you like your job? And they all said the same thing. Oh, we love it.
There you go.
Yeah. And I spent 5 minutes watching 4 people really enjoy answering the phone and saying, hi, this company or that company, because I've got about 50 companies, you know, and depending on which number it comes through, they know. So they say, hi, Comfort Zone Consultants, can I help you? Oh, I'm sorry, Jonathan's with a client at the moment, which they always say, by the way. Oh, Jonathan's with a client at the moment. Can I take your number, please? And you know, so that's all done. And the important thing is, like John Arrow said, find people who are comfortable doing what they do. Yeah. And the way they do it, it's not how you do it. It's not what you're doing. It's how you do it and how that's presented. Now the thing is, I had the same frustration, Sandra. I really did. That, you know, was I putting the right person in the right job? Was it, you know, Was I asking the right person to do the right thing? And you know, the profiling came when actually we were talking about putting a course together. We were having dinner at Powderham Castle just down the road there. We were having lunch, and I was talking to two of our fellows, facilitators on our courses, and I said to Alan, I said, well, I tell you what, Alan, why don't you organise the back end of the room, and Paul, why don't you meet people when they're coming in and that? Because it twigged to me, you know, that Alan was actually an evaluator, and he liked managing and organising, and Paul's a predictor, and he likes mediating. He likes putting things right for people and making sure that they get the right thing. So they naturally fell into the roles that we got waiting for them. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if I got a profile or some way of finding out what people were without having to go through 2 or 3 months? I mean, I've known these guys for years, you know. So it was easy for me to find the right way of doing things when we started to do something new. That's generally not the case, so you can profile people quite quickly. And people say, oh, I can't profile my accountant. I did.
Yeah. Actually,
profile my accountant.
I'm conscious of the fact that we're probably in our last 10 minutes, so...
sorry. Yes, I do.
No. The reason I say that is because a lot of people are probably thinking this is really, really useful. And I think the other thing I've gotten out of what you've just said is you profiled your accountant in 10 minutes. So from what you've just said there...
No, not that long, 3.
Well, even better, in 3 minutes. And it would have been an accurate profile. So one of the things that comes out from that is the simplicity of your tool. We're not talking about something where you need a degree in rocket science to be able to use it.
No.
So that leads me on to a question, which is, what would people expect if they come over to the comfort zone principle? What are they going to find on that particular site, Jonathan?
Well, basically, we're in a refurb situation at the moment, so things will probably change next week. But basically, the most important thing is that you find a complementary profiling system. This gives you a very very basic profiling. You can buy a much more detailed one, and we are right at this moment in time putting together hangouts like this.
Right.
And putting together masterclasses for people who want to get into it in more depth, especially people who are coaches, who are consultants, you know, and they're looking to take this out there. We've got some coach training coming up and that sort of thing as well. I don't want to do the big sale.
No.
The most important thing is go and get the profiling. It takes 3 minutes. There's 10 questions. My favourite quote of all time is attributed to Einstein, as most of them are, but it's attributed to Albert Einstein, and I actually think he did say this, and that is that everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. So we've got the questions down to 10, and that mathematically gives us enough spread so that we can guarantee an 80% hit rate, which in profiling systems is good. That actually beats Myers-Briggs, and that's got 16 different personality types and 640 different questions if you do the full bit. So it's 10 questions. It takes 3 minutes, you know, and we're not going to go around on social sites saying, guess who's an observer, you know. We want you to do that, you know. But so that's the main thing on the site. Obviously, there's articles on there, you know. There's some more interesting stuff and some quotes. Look, it's about being comfortable. When you're most comfortable, that's where you get excited and happy. See, there's been some research that, if you got me on again, we talk about the research that's been done. This thing that you've got to be anxious to learn, you've got to be excited to learn, because when you're excited, you get dopamine, you get serotonin, and you're only excited if you're enjoying it. Yeah, you get scared, and you know the problem with excitement and fear is that they are exactly the same physiologically.
Right.
You know, I mean, but I was doing a few years ago. I was doing a workshop on panic attacks.
Right.
Working with some nurses and on people having panic attacks, you know, of having operations and stuff like that. And I said, right, what am I describing? I said, cold sweats, loss of control of your breathing gets shorter, the adrenaline starts to rush, the iodine starts to cause muscle cramps. You know, you almost lose the power of speech. You become totally focused down on one thing. What am I describing? And every one of them said it's panic attack, and I said no, orgasm. And physiologically, fear and excitement are so close that sometimes we think we're scared when all we are actually is excited. And I remember standing at the Theatre Royal in Stoke-on-Trent in the wings after being told the house was full. Right. And it was the first time I'd been anywhere more than a couple of hundred people. I'd just been told there was 2,160 people in this room waiting for me, you know, and my heart started to go and everything, and my music started, and the voiceover said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Chase." I walked out, and I was so comfortable I was floating on air. Yeah? Yeah. But just before that, now I could have said that was proscenophobia, I could have said that was fear, but it wasn't, it was actually excitement. Now before I speak, I get myself excited because then I go out and I talk most comfortably.
I remember, I don't know whether it was Tony Robbins or someone else, but they were describing two celebrity clients, and they were singers, both of them were singers, and I think the first one was, this was some time ago, the first one was Carly Simon. And she was consulting because she loved performing, but she had these palpitations and sweat, and her hands were sweaty. She would imagine going out to the stage and imagine getting the first note wrong, based on the feeling of her heart accelerating, the sweatiness of her hands, and this feeling in her gut. And she wanted Tony to help. And he said the curious thing was, 2 weeks later, Bruce Springsteen came in. And he said, do you know what, when I go out on stage, I get sweaty palms, I'm just about to go out on stage, I've got this feeling in my gut, and my heart is really, really racing. Tony, I need you to help me keep that feeling, because when I have that feeling, it keeps me on the edge. And he said it fascinated him that the description that they both had was exactly the same, but in one person's head, the connotation was that things would go horribly wrong. And in Bruce Springsteen's head, if it didn't happen, he was fearful to have a bad performance. So that always fascinated me.
Well, it's because our physiology is very closely linked with our with our neural cortex, you know, and certainly with the limbic system. But I forget the name of the white paper, but I was reading a white paper the other day that's proved pretty conclusively that, you know, even if you just tell people they're excited rather than scared, they perform much, much better. So, yeah, you know, there's pretty conclusive evidence that kids who are put into an anxiety state, taken out of their comfort zone to learn something, actually don't. Yes. You know? And we don't blame the system for that. Unfortunately, we blame the kid. Yeah.
And that's a really strong point. Sandra, have you got anything you want to add at all?
Absolutely nothing.
You're in your comfort zone.
I'm in my comfort zone.
I'll bored you that much.
No. It was exciting and interesting, and I think that the main thing is that sometimes people are just afraid, which I probably shouldn't use the word, but I think they're afraid to be comfortable.
Mm. Yeah. Are you surprised? You know, I mean, there are people who are scared to tread on cracks in the pavement. You know, in the boardwalk. Sandra, I've actually hypnotised those people. Yeah, those are inborn fears that have been taught into us. You know, think about school. Think about school. You're sitting at the back. You're reading your book. You've got your legs up on your desk. You're swinging backwards and forwards. You're just whisking through the pages. What happens? Well, in my day, I come from a non-PC generation. I'm 60 next week, so you know, and I come from. In my day, what happened was you got hit by a much bigger book across the back of the head, and it was sit up straight. Yeah. So you were taught not to be comfortable. The comfortable was wrong. Yeah. So and you're overriding that all the time. The problem is that it's like you said. I shudder when I see there's no gain without pain. With too much pain, there's no gain. Yeah. And where do you stop? And you stop by not going into the pain in the first place and saying, right, okay, instead of expanding my comfort zone, why can't I get really, really good in here? Something I know that made you laugh when we were talking earlier on in the week, Sean. You know, people say to me about Tony Robbins, who I think is the best NLPer I've ever seen. He beats the socks off Bandler, and he invented the damn thing. Yes. But Tony Robbins, you know, he says you've got to stretch yourself and you've got to go outside of your comfort zone, and you've got to walk on the fire, and then you've got to stand in the room, and you've got to do that guy's been doing exactly that for 35 years because he's in his comfort zone. Tony, what you're saying is Tony's great, and I agree with you, and we've both seen him. But in a way, you could argue that he's still doing the same type of seminar. He's doing the same
as he did. And that's quite funny.
Yeah. Because he's in his comfort zone, and his comfort zone is what he does. Yeah.
Which is probably why he's good at what he does, because he's feeling good and he's feeling comfortable within it. So I take your point, and in fact, the first time you said that to me, I slightly misinterpreted it, but actually you're saying that's probably a good thing because he's a master, not in a sense, because he feels good about where he is. So I guess in the last couple of minutes then, Jonathan, just to remind everybody, because I know you've got loads of sites and you've got a great YouTube channel and lots of different presences, but the one that we want to draw people to is www.
Yeah.
It's the comfort zone, and that's just. Am I right in thinking that's? And I'll put the link in the post in the post later. But it's www.c. Depending on whether you're from the UK or the US.
The CZP.
Yeah, CZP or CZP.com.
Yeah. American is CZP.
CZP. And what they'll get over there is everyone will get the opportunity to access a free. Tim Longwell's obviously already done it. Thanks, Tim. Everybody will get an opportunity to do a shorter version of the profile at just 10 questions. But
we do ask for emails. Don't put in a false email because you'll miss the good stuff. And then what we do is we send three emails giving you bite-sized chunks of information based on your profile.
And is there, did you say, am I wrong in thinking this, did you say there's a higher level of membership, Jonathan?
There's a bespoke profile that we have to do, we're doing basically by hand to get it as accurately as possible, because for instance, when you do the score, you may be assessed at being evaluated because you've got you've got, say, you score 5 on evaluator, but then you might score 2 on predictor, you might score 0 on creator, you might score 2 on performer and 1 on observer. So obviously, you know, nothing's perfect, and you are all those things, but what that means is that where you score a 0, it doesn't mean you can't do that thing. Obviously, sure. you can do it, but it means you're not going to be very good at it. So that's one that you are better just outsourcing. You know,
like that.
Don't do what. You know, I mean, we completely outsource now that we've got a good accountant. We completely outsource our invoicing books. Everything is done by our accountant, because when Jane used to do it on her own, it never got done till the end of the month because she didn't enjoy doing it. So it was a last-minute rush
Sure.
At the end of the month, you know, and if we were being audited at the end of the tax year, that was horrendous for 2 days, you know. But now it's all done. It's all done out there, you know. And Jane's the one who puts together, because she's our creator. She puts together the model, how it looks, and everything like that, you know. So so it's. Do you know the best phrase? I don't know if they use it in America, but the best phrase we've got over here is horses for courses.
Horses for courses.
You know?
I like that.
And you know, it's. I mean, you can find a predictive accountant, but I tell you what, he hasn't got a fabulous reputation. You know.
No, that's for sure. Jonathan, I'm just going to ping a couple of comments up. Now, we have had quite a big audience, and it's kind of interesting. Sometimes you have smaller audiences and a lot of comments.
Oh, you put the word hypnotist in there. That always.
Yeah, no, well, sometimes the audience has stayed with us, but I think what's happened is that people have rather chosen to listen, if you like, than.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, but I'm going to put a couple of things up. You may well know these wonderful ladies. They're certainly good friends of mine and Sandra's. The English sisters, based over in Italy, very, very strong NLP coaches, brilliant coaches, know them really well, and always very amusing as well. So what they've said is comfortable show, thank you, smiles from the English sisters. So bless you, ladies, great to see you. Thank you for that. I'll take that one down if I can. Sandra knows I'm not in my comfort zone with the comment trackers. I'm just going to put up this one from, I hope I pronounced this properly, Dara O'Sullivan. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. It sounds Irish, actually, so God forbid if I haven't, with a name like Sean Mahon, I should be able to pronounce that. But Dara, awesome, everyone, thank you. So thanks for that comment, Dara, really appreciate it. Jonathan, just to recap then, in terms of contacting you, your preferred contact for this is www.czp.com.
Yeah,
that would be correct.
Yeah, and of course you've got a link that you can put up, haven't you?
Well, it's a bit.ly link, unfortunately. I was going to put.
That's okay. That's okay. You've got a link that goes to our site. See, the way that it works like this, Sean, as I explained to you, if people do come on board and they do get the pro version, which we'll give a reduction on, you know, if they use your link, then you get a percentage of that, and I think that's only fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's very gracious of you, Jonathan. I was going to introduce that. Here it is. Hopefully that projects the right way. It is.
Yeah. So folks, if you're going off this video, if you're going, that's the link you use.
Yeah, and what I would say, Jonathan, I'm right in saying that anyone who chooses to go through this link, and obviously I'd really appreciate that, they won't end up paying any more going through the link that you've given me than they would otherwise.
Absolutely.
That's correct.
Not. No. In fact, they'll probably pay less.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. So thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for their attention. Thank you, Sandra, for your inimitable presence. And we'll just close the show and invite you to go through it. It is a bit.ly link. I will put a written version in the stream a little bit later. Thanks everybody for your attention. Glad you could join us. And
thank you, Sean, and thank you so much, Sandra. I would kiss the back of your hand if we were together.
Oh, what a charm! What a charm! You can see where you get a reputation.
Love the English manners. They're wonderful.
Oh yeah, you really don't know me.
Okay, well I can still love them.
Well, fantastic, everybody. Really appreciate it. Take care and see you soon on another Successfully Social.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye. Cheers, guys. Bye. Bye.
Bye.